Now, if you're looking for a brand new long iron replacement or simply a go-to club you can hit off the tee or the turf, this is the video for you, because I've tested all the best golf hybrids on the market in 2026, and hopefully by the end of this video you will discover the exact model that fits your requirements the best. So should we get started? Now, before we get onto the categories, just a quick word on how I tested all these hybrids. So we are here in the Golf Monthly Performance Lab, powered by Foresight, using the Foresight Sports GC3 launch monitor and Titleist Pro V1 golf balls, the 2025 version. That's how I got all my data on these hybrids, and I've set them up as close to 19 degrees as possible. It wasn't always possible given some of the lofts that the samples were available in, but we've adjusted them where possible to as close to 19 degrees as we could. And where it isn't 90 degrees, I've specified that in the data table that's going to flash up later in the video. In terms of shaft, these are all just the stock stiff shaft offerings that are available by the brand. And in terms of how I tested them, as I said, got the data indoors, but I also took them outside, hit them off grass, off tight lies, off the tee, also out of the rough as well. So hopefully you will agree that giving them a really thorough and comprehensive test to see how they perform in different environments around the golf course, which hopefully makes the recommendations I'm going to give to you in this video as accurate as possible. And if you do like the look of any of the hybrids I talk about in this video, if there's one that you think is really going to suit your game, I've put some handy links in the description down below so you can get your hands on that particular hybrid for the best price in your area. Right, best hybrids off the tee. You know, a lot of time if the hole gets a bit tight, you're going to need a club that you can go to off the tee to give you a bit more accuracy and keep the ball in play, and there were some hybrids that really stood out to me. The first being the Callaway Apex UW. Now, UW stands for utility wood, and interestingly, if you look on the Callaway Golf website, this club is listed under fairway wood. So maybe it's in the wrong video, but I would say it's actually looks a bit more like a large forgiving hybrid than it does a fairway wood. It's got that sort of symmetrical shape which you often associate with fairway woods, whereas hybrids can get a little niche, but it's a really pleasing shape down behind the ball. It's large, don't get me wrong. I like the contrast between the crown and the face, gives you a little bit of help with alignment. But this club is an absolute monster. It's this is the 21 degree sample I've got here, so it's a little bit weaker than most of the other hybrids on test. It's a fixed hosel, so you can't adjust it for loft, but this kept up in terms of distance and ball speed with all the other hybrids on test, despite being at 21 degrees. It's got this tungsten weight at the front here, so it gets that weight low and full, which gives you really good ball speed, really good distance, keeps the spin relatively low. And for me, what I liked about this hybrid was that it was incredibly forgiving. Obviously it's fast, it's consistently fast as well when you don't quite strike the middle, but also the flight bias is pretty neutral, so I wasn't seeing a lot of curvature or bias to left or right. It was pretty straight. Good strikes are rewarded with incredible distance, and as a result I think this is going to be a really strong contender off the tee, but also in other areas of the course, which I'll come on to later. Now, the next hybrid that excelled off the tee for me was the TaylorMade QI4D. Now, this is a lot more compact than the Apex UW that we just talked about. Probably going to appeal to the eye of the slightly lower handicapper, depending on what you look for in a hybrid. But there's two reasons why I think this club really performed well off the tee. The first is the low spin. So this was the lowest spinning hybrid on test for me by quite a long way, spinning around about the 2700 RPMs, which is a lot lower than most of the other hybrids on test, even though it's set in 19 degrees. Which is going to give you that flat ball flight, that penetrating ball flight. It's going to cut through the wind and give you maximum distance off the tee. It was one of the longest on test, so if distance is something you prioritise from your hybrid, this is the one to go for. And the other reason I think it's a great option off the tee is just the feel. It's so incredibly powerful. The sensation when you strike this out in the middle is completely different to a lot of the hybrids on test here. It just gives you that really dense sensation that is absolutely fantastic. No energy is lost in that collision. It's one of the best feeling hybrids on test. So for those reasons, if you're looking for an absolute monster off the tee, low spinning bombs, QI4D is the one for you. Next up off the tee would be the Swixon ZXi. Now, this is a carryover product from last year, but it's still very much relevant because of the all-round performance that it offers. For me, very fast in terms of ball speed. It will set slightly lower in loft than the other, so 18.5 degrees, so a little bit stronger, but very solid performance off the tee. Low spin and quite low launch as well, so if you are pegging it up, you haven't got to worry about shots sort of ballooning or climbing too much. It was a relatively penetrating launch. Lowish spin, that combination was a recipe for really good distance off the tee, and I think the profile is interesting. It's sort of like a more rectangular shape, which some people like. I didn't necessarily prefer it, but if you want something that's going to appeal, the sort of the spin and launch profile for a better player, but maybe has a little bit more meat behind the ball that maybe sort of mid-handicappers might like, the Srixon ZXi is a fantastic option. Powerful, long, and pretty forgiving as well. Now, the last hybrid that I think you will like if you hit your hybrid quite a lot off the tee versus off the deck is the PXG Lightning. Now, this is a more compact hybrid down behind the ball than a lot of others on test, but it's got a carbon crown here, so shifting a lot of weight lower, it keeps the spin down. It wasn't a super low spinner for me off the tee, but just it's got quite a tall face, you'll see here, so I think hybrids that generally have quite deep faces are better suited to tee shots. Still perform pretty well off the deck as well, but off the tee especially, felt like this was a pretty competent performer. I think it's going to suit a broad range of golfers, and you've got lots of adjustability here to dial in that ball flight depending on what you're looking for off the tee. So you've got removable weights here. If you do via fitting, you've got a loft sleeve as well. So lots of ways you can tune this to suit the ball flight that you want. But in terms of off the tee performance, the PXG Lightning was very, very good. And the one thing I would say, it's got a very subtle, dense feel. So if you like a hybrid that doesn't have a lot of sound or feedback from it, this is the club to go for. I think that carbon crown is contributing to that, but I very much enjoyed the feel of this PXG Lightning hybrid. Right, our next category is the best hybrid off the deck. Now, this is the area where I think most golfers are going to be interested in how these hybrids perform, and obviously they all perform pretty well off the deck, but there were a few that sort of stood out to me versus others on test. The first being the Mizuno JPX1. Now, I really like this hybrid. It's got a pretty large, oversized look to it. There's a hint of blue in the crown, which I really like. In terms of why I like this, particularly off the deck, it was more the sort of launch and spin were higher than average, I would say, and that led to a little bit more of a steeper descent angle than other hybrids on test. So that's going to give you that stopping power. If you are hitting from distance, like we all are with a hybrid, into slightly firm greens, that sort of steeper descent with the relatively high spin is hopefully going to give you a little bit more stopping power than others. It's got the speed bevel sole here, so it's going to give you better turf interaction through the grouse. Certainly I felt like it was one of the quicker hybrids through the deck. The ball speed output is good. It's not noteworthy by any means, but it's not slow by any means either. It's got good ball speed, definitely good launch and spin, and was particularly prolific off the deck. So a really good option if you tend to use your hybrid more on approach shots than you do tee shots. Right, next we have the Cobra Optum. Now, this is one of those hybrids where you just look down on it and you just know you're going to hit a half decent shot. It's just a really inviting profile down behind the ball. It's pretty large but very clean at address. I like the matte finish on the crown with the sort of subtle logo on the top there. Just a really inviting hybrid to hit, and the performance I got with it off the deck especially was really good. It is one of the higher launching, higher spinning hybrids on test, which is going to help with shots off the deck. It's got quite a shallow face, which again, down behind the ball, you just feel like you're going to get it up and away quite easily. And obviously it's got a lot of adjustability on here, so you can really tune this to suit the ball flight that you want. And if you want to hit higher, softer landing shots, you can with this Future Fit 33 hosel. There's a lot of settings on here that's going to allow you to create the ball flight that you want. So if you're someone who wants to get dialed in with shots, particularly off the deck, there's a lot of options here that's really going to help you do that. And the spin and launch profile, as I said, sort of lends itself more to approach shots than maybe tee shots, but it doesn't sacrifice ball speed as well. It was a good combination of those launch, spin and ball speed that we're all looking for from our hybrid. Right, another hybrid that we absolutely have to talk about in terms of performance off the ground would be the Callaway Quantum Max. Now, there's a few reasons why I've chosen this one here. The first is that it was actually, looking at my data, the highest launching 19-degree hybrid on test. So clearly it has no issue in getting the ball up from the ground. It's got this also a step sole design here, so that it sort of minimises the amount of club that comes into contact with the ground when you're striking it. It's pretty subtle, to be honest with you, but you can see there's a slight ridge there, which means the back half of the hybrid sits slightly lower than the front, just minimises this sort of interaction with the ground, and as a result picks the ball up nice and cleanly when you're hitting it off the deck. I like the profile of the club. I think it's not too large, not too compact. It sort of sits in the middle. I'm not a big fan of these graphics on the back of the head, but apart from that, I think it's it combines something that looks inviting to hit without being oversized or chunky. And the feel and sound is very unique from this hybrid. So it has a a much more louder sort of metallic sound to it, a lot more presence to it at impact versus some of the others that have a more subtle, denser sensation. This is quite loud and metallic, so if that's something that you like, definitely steer you towards the Quantum Max. But again, if maximum launch is what you're looking for, maybe you're a slower swing speed and you need a little bit more help to get the ball in the air, clearly there's a lot that's gone into the Quantum Max hybrid that would benefit you, and it is adjustable for loft as well, so you can really dial in the ball flight characteristics of this hybrid. So yeah, definitely one that excels when hit off the ground. Right, just a reminder, if you like this video, please do click the like button and subscribe to the Golf Monthly YouTube channel, and get in the comments, tag a friend who can't hit their long irons and needs to upgrade in a brand new hybrid. Right, now we're moving on to the most forgiving hybrids of 2026. This is an area that I think a lot of you watching are going to be interested in. Which hybrid is going to give you the most assistance on those off-centre hits? And the first one I would want to talk about is the tailor-made QI 4D Max. Now this is, as the name suggests, a sort of larger, more stable version of the QI 4D hybrid, which was a bit of a low spin bomber. This has a slightly different launch and spin profile. You can see that the back weight here has been moved slightly further away from the face. That's just going to give you a little bit more stability on those off-centre hits, and stability was the theme definitely with this hybrid. I felt like, you know, whether it was in terms of stability, off-centre, heel on toe, produced actually surprisingly straight ball flight. I didn't see a lot of deviation either way. It did have a little bit more draw bias than the standard QI 4D, but only subtle here. We're only sort of talking 3 or 4 yards of more left bias, but generally speaking, this was a really user-friendly hybrid. It's not adjustable for loft here, so you see I tested it in the 20 degrees, so it didn't quite go as far as the 19 degree QI 4D hybrid, but still ample ball speed and distance, but as I said, really forgiving on those off-centre hits. So if your strike pattern is a little bit inconsistent, definitely one to try. And also, what I haven't talked about is this unusual sort of sight dash on the top here, which I'm not sold on, to be honest. I mean, it's good. It's a good reference point for the centre of the face, not really helping you with alignment. I think it's a bit Marmite, one to try. It's not something we've seen before, but yeah, jury's out on that. But if you want forgiveness from your hybrid, QI 4D Max, worth a try. Right, we can't talk about the most forgiving hybrids without talking about Ping, right? We know Ping make very forgiving golf clubs, and the G440 hybrid is no exception. Now, in terms of spec makeup, actually the stock shaft length on this particular loft, so this is the 20 degree head lofted down to 19, comes in around about ½ inch shorter than most of the other hybrids on test, so that actually hurt it in terms of distance compared to the other hybrids on test. But you could argue that if you're hitting it mostly off the deck and into greens, you don't want out and out distance, you want a hybrid that's going to hit a specific distance time and time again, and that's where the Ping really excelled. It's the consistency of the spin and the ball speed that really stood out to me here. So if you're looking for something that's reliable, if your strike pattern does move around a bit, you're not getting that volatility in terms of ball speed and distance. In fact, I think on all the shots I hit with this hybrid, the difference between my longest and shortest was between 6 and 7 yards, which was outstanding. You know, I hit some pretty bad strikes with that as well, especially low on the face as well. You're getting a lot of performance from the bottom section of this face. So if you're looking for one that's going to mask your misses, really flatter your performance on the course, the Ping G440 is absolutely the way to go. It's not short by any means. I think if I was comparing it with a like-for-like shaft length, it would be comparable. Not sold on the dot, to be honest, on the crown of the top here. But apart from that, if you're looking for consistency and something that's going to really help you out when you need it, Ping G440 is the way to go. Right, another one that really stood out in terms of forgiveness was absolutely the Titleist GT2. Now, this is one of the more generous profiles down behind the ball. It's a nice, large, oversized design, going to inspire a lot of confidence. It's a really premium, clean-looking hybrid. You can see there's sort of no graphics or anything on the top, just a really simple, as we know from Titleist, you know, they like that sort of classic minimalistic look, and they've absolutely nailed it with the GT2. In terms of like ball speed performance, this was right up there, even though it's actually set to 20.25 degrees of loft, so a lot higher than a lot of the others on test, but it more than held its own in terms of distance. But it's not, you know, you might expect the GT2 compared to the GT3 to be sort of the more higher spinning, higher launching product, but actually it was relatively sort of flat in terms of the launch and spin. It was, you know, not high and spinny by any means, so definitely could still be one for high speed players, as well as maybe, you know, slower swing speed players might even want to go into the GT1, which is a slightly different option, which we haven't tested in this particular video because it's quite niche. But GT2, a good all-round performer, gives you good forgiveness, but still while being relatively low spin. So I think that combination is going to appeal to a very broad range of players. And while all those hybrids I've just talked about were forgiving compared to a lot of the other hybrids on test, there was one that absolutely stood out head and shoulders above the rest, and it was the Callaway Quantum Max OS. Now, this is one of the larger looking heads, I think you'll agree, down behind the ball, which makes sense given we're talking about the most forgiving hybrids. But this thing was just sensational. Whatever Callaway have done with creating this hybrid, to hit straighter shots, it works. It was fast, but it was incredibly accurate. You could throw a pretty small blanket over where all my shots finished with this particular hybrid. And what was interesting to me, so sort of billing this hybrid as a club that's going to give you a little bit more draw bias versus the standard Quantum Max hybrid. But actually for me, this had more right bias than any other hybrid on test, which makes absolutely no sense. But as you know, most golfers tend to miss hybrids left. It's a problem that brands have tried to address, but still most of these hybrids for me did have more of a left bias than a right bias and missed the target to the left. Seeing something like this where the ball flight was pretty neutral or slightly fading for a right-hander was absolutely what I want to see. But it was just more the consistency of the distance output which really impressed. Like regardless of where I was hitting it, I was getting really good ball speed and distance. And as I said, if you're striking it relatively consistently out the middle, you're going to be rewarded with a long, consistent ball flight where the dispersion is incredibly tight. So if you're looking for something that's going to give you repeatable distances, but also one that just looks really easy to hit and is incredibly user-friendly, I can't stress enough how impressed I was with the Callaway Quantum Max OS hybrid. If you're an inconsistent golfer, this one is going to really flatter your misses. Right, just a quick section to talk about the best anti-slice hybrids. I say quick because a lot of these hybrids have a bit more sort of draw bias built into them as standard, some more than others, which we're going to talk about. But if you're looking for hybrids that have maybe more draw bias than others, that's going to help you negate that slice that a lot of you suffer with, there were 3 hybrids that stood out to me. The first one being the Mizuno. This was probably slightly more subtle than the others I'm going to talk about, but definitely had a pronounced draw bias to it, which I quite liked. You know, you could sort of aim down the right and know it's going to come back most of the time. So that's one to try. We've already talked about some of the other things we like about the Mizuno, but the other 2 that probably had more draw bias than the others would definitely be the Wilson Dynapower. Now, I had this is actually a static loft 4 hybrid, so 22 degrees. So you see from the data table, it wasn't the longest for me because of that, but actually, it actually kept up surprisingly well in terms of distance output, given it's a 22 degree head, but also had a very pronounced draw bias to it. So if you're looking for something that's going to fight that right miss, absolutely steer you towards the Wilson Dynapower. Actually felt really nice, like it feels fast, feels stable. And I think if I was testing it in a comparable loft, I think the output at the other end would be comparable with most of the other hybrids on test. And finally, the other one that I think excelled here in terms of adding a little bit of draw bias to your shots would be the Tour Edge Exotics Max. Now, it's an unusual shape. It's quite a large profile, but it's quite short from heel to toe, so it takes a little bit of getting used to. The face feels like it's a lot smaller than a lot of the hybrids on test, so maybe not one for the absolute beginner, but in terms of like ball speed, it was a comparable performer compared to the others. I like the look of it. It's got that carbon crown on the top here, puts that weight nice and low. You've got this sort of weight in the back here, so it's nice and forgiving, and just gives you that subtle draw bias to your shots that I think is going to help a lot of golfers out that tends to slice the ball. So no real standout performance from the Tour Edge, but just a nice healthy amount of draw bias with good distance as well to boot. So if you're a right misser, give those 3 a try. Right, now we come on to arguably one of the most important categories. Which of these hybrids is the most versatile? Which ones can you really hit from those different situations around the course? Can you maneuver the ball flight the most? Which is going to give you the most options when it comes to tee shots, approach shots, shots out the rough? And there were a few that stood out to me. The first being the Titleist GT3. Now, this is one of the more compact hybrids in terms of the profile. Definitely suits probably the eye of the better player a little bit more. Short from front to back, quite a deep face to it. But what I liked about the GT3 was it sat right in the middle of that launch and spin window where it definitely could be functional off the tee, but also be prolific off the ground as well. You've got these adjustable weights here, which I think is going to help you adjust that ball flight. So if you want to see more left or right bias, you're going to have the option to do that, as well as the adjustability on the hosel as well. But just found like this was a really competent performer off the ground, out the rough. It popped the ball up nicely, but still worked well off the tee. So sort of one that could definitely be suited to all the different shots you might want to hit around the golf course. So would definitely recommend trying that one if you're a relatively competent ball striker. The other one I really like in terms of versatility was the ping. I know we've sort of already talked about this already, but as I mentioned, really fast off the bottom of the face, which means it's good off the ground, pop the ball up nicely from the rough, but still with the spin profile that it has is perfectly functional off the tee. It's not going to be short by any means, and that forgiveness as well is just going to help you in any situation around the golf course. So definitely recommend the ping if you're looking for something that's going to give you options in different areas. One hybrid we haven't talked about yet, which is definitely doing it a disservice because it's probably one of the better hybrids out of everything on this test, is the Cobra King Tech. Now this is an absolute powerhouse. The ball speed output, I mean, I was testing this at the end of quite a long session, and I'll be honest, I was pretty tired, but I still managed to get nearly 138 miles an hour ball speed out of this, given how tired I was, which was amazing. Like, it's definitely, if you're looking for raw speed, the King Tech Hybrid, whatever they've done to the design of this, it's a really powerful club. You've got the, as I said, the adjustable weights, you've got the Future Fit 33 hosel, so you can dial it to whatever shot that you want to hit on the course, but whatever type of shot you hit, it's going to give you maximum distance. So I think this is a club that if you're looking for something that's going to give you lots of options around the course, the Cobra King Tech is definitely the way to go. But there was one hybrid that I think trumps all the others in terms of versatility, and that won't surprise you to hear is the Callaway Apex UW. Now I've already talked about how forgiving it was, how good it is off the tee with that sort of spin profile and the ball speed output that you get from it, but in terms of other areas around the golf course, I think this is going to be a really strong performer. It's got the slightly stepped sole, so you can see here, so there's not much of the club that comes into contact with the ground. It's got this sort of more rounded leading edge here at the bottom, which I think just helps get under the ball out of the rough a little bit more easier than some of the others that have sort of more squarer faces. I feel like you're getting more of the leading edge contacting the grass and it can get a bit snagged up, whereas I feel like hybrids that have more of a rounded section to the bottom edge perform a little bit better out the rough, and I certainly found that for me, that combination of the step sole, the weighting at the front and the design of the leading edge meant it was a really good performer at the rough, but I could still use it off the tee as well, forgiving. Like if you're looking for the Swiss Army knife of hybrids, while Callaway sort of technically class it as a fairway wood, I would say it's a really good option to have as in between your fairway wood and your longest iron. This is going to be a club that you can hit in every area of the golf course, and you're going to be really impressed with the results. Right, so that concludes the look at all different categories. Hopefully you found that useful depending on where you tend to use your hybrid most around the golf course. I've given you some options there, 3 to 4 in each category. And then in terms of choosing one, it'd be a case of maybe you going to try them all, maybe thinking about how they look, because I think there's a lot of different profiles here, and you need to like the look of your hybrid down behind the ball. So hopefully it's going to help you narrow down your search a little bit. But in terms of me picking maybe some of the standout products in different areas, let's give that a go now. So in terms of which was the quickest for me in terms of ball speed, it was the Quantum Max OS from Callaway. So if you're looking for raw ball speed, that would be the one to go for. In terms of which one was actually the longest for me, off the deck, in terms of carry distance, it definitely was the TaylorMade QI 4D. So again, absolute monster if you're looking for maximum output at the other end, that would be the one to go for. In terms of which one stopped the quickest on the greens, I think is, again, quite important for golfers who hitting it into greens. There's two that stood out, would be the Wilson Dynapower and the Cobra Optim. So those are really good options there. In terms of which one I would put in my bag, so I've actually just transitioned from a hybrid into a 7-wood. So I'm clearly liking the look of those sort of larger, more fairway wood style heads. So for me, it would definitely be the Callaway Apex UW. Again, one of the more larger heads, but as I talked about, can hit all the different shots, different lies around the course. It's just a really fun club to use. But in terms of which hybrid I think is the best all-rounder, which is the one that's going to suit the broadest range of golfers. I think there's a couple. I think the Titleist GT2 is still, it's been around for a while, but it's still an excellent all-round performer. So that would be one I'd steer towards if you prefer a larger looking head. But if you prefer maybe a slightly more compact head, the best all-rounder for me would be the Cobra King Tech. Absolute monster of a hybrid, really strong distance output, but still with the adjustability, you can tune it to hit whatever sort of flight windows and trajectories you want. So the Cobra King Tech, I think, would definitely be one of the best all-round hybrids you can get. So that concludes my look at all the best hybrids. I would love to hear from you. Do you use a hybrid? Has this video helped you in terms of maybe if you're looking to upgrade? Let me know which one is taking your eye the most. I'd love to hear from you. If you've got any questions about any of these hybrids, please do let me know. I will reply to you as quickly as I can. But that's all from me here in the Golf Monthly Performance Lab. I'll see you next time.